How are we doing this morning? We're glad you're here. Genesis 29 is where we're going to be this morning. If you have a Bible, grab it out, and we're going to jump into Genesis chapter 29. If you pay attention to culture, you will know the name Taylor Swift, all right? Taylor Swift is an artist, right? And she's become the first female artist to go platinum in 4 straight records. Some call her the queen of pop. She has a net worth of $570 million, so she's done decent, I would say, in her career. You can go see Taylor in concert this summer. If you want to go to StubHub right now, you can pick a summer date for her concert, and the lowest ticket cost is $1,400 a ticket. The highest is $7,300 a ticket if you want to go, and so just an opportunity for you and your family to go out on a nice time together. There's a dude who saw her in concert, and he's attempting to sell the contacts that he wore to see Taylor Swift through for $10,000. So you could also just buy the contacts if that would be something that would actually interest you. Taylor Swift. Why are we talking about Taylor Swift, all right? She wrote a song last year, and the song was called Anti-Hero. And I want to read 3 phrases to you of the chorus, all right? The first phrase is this: it's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. At tea time, everybody agrees. I'll stare directly at the sun, but never in the mirror. Listen to the theology again of the first phrase. It's me. Hi, I'm the problem. It's me. Interesting. The question that we want to wrestle with this morning is this: what if the greatest cause of your mess is you? What if the greatest cause of your mess in your life is actually a you problem? You see, here's what I know. Each and every single one of us can list all sorts of problems that we have in our life that literally have resulted in a significant mess. And here's what we often do, though. We can label who those people are. We could say, hey, my spouse has not been doing their job. Our kids, man, they're in a really hard season. My boss is a big jerk, and it's impossible to please them. Our extended family really is the problem. Our neighbors are super annoying. Our health has really been the issue. Financially, we're struggling significantly. People are just really not listening to me. Maybe nobody's actually hearing me. I think we've trained ourselves to not take the problem on ourselves, and we've trained ourselves to actually point the finger that everyone else around us is actually the problem. We're all pro at pointing the finger. And we've seen in the story of Jacob that Jacob is actually on the run from the mess that he's made. And do you think that he could point the finger at his brother Esau? Do you think Jacob might even be willing to point the finger at his father Isaac, or maybe even his mother who loved him deeply, who told him to run and go start his life over somewhere else? Today we're going to see this. There's a process that God is slowly bringing Jacob through in his life to make Jacob self-aware of who he really is. Now, before we jump into Genesis 29, I want us to get our focus on one verse to set the tone, to agree with what we've already been talking about, and that is James chapter 4, verse 1. And it says this: what causes quarrels and what causes fights among us? Is it not this, that your passions are at war within you? Hey, church, read this verse. If you can receive this verse as a gift right now, it'll really help you. If you can allow this gift to be a mirror to you right now, it'll really serve you well, because often I think what we do is we lie, we give excuses, we blame shift to get our focus off our mess. So what causes quarrels? What causes fights among us, even amongst God's people? It's this: your passions are at war within you. Your own flesh is declaring war against you. And I wonder how many people in the room this morning are actually losing ground because the evil one has deceived you into thinking that everyone else is the problem. Today we're going to look at Genesis 29. Looking at the story of Jacob heading to his uncle Laban's house. And I just want to be clear up front as we kind of read through a chunk of verses here, that there's no God talk. There's no prayer, there's no worship, there's no meditation. There's literally no awesome encounter with God like we saw last week with Jacob and the ladder. It's just normal life. And so maybe that's refreshing to you to read this story today, that it's just normal life for people, because sometimes we read the Bible and we struggle with how we actually relate with it. But here's the thing. Just because God seems absent in Genesis 29 does not mean that God is not present. Because God is going to use every single detail in the life of Jacob, right, to make him more aware, to show him who he really is, to bring him to the end of himself. So the first 8 verses, Jacob is heading to a land called Haran. And he's heading there and he sees this well. And around this well is 3 shepherds with their flocks. And he notices there's a huge stone on top of the well. And what's happening is all the shepherds are waiting for all the shepherds to gather together around this well, because what they do is they all work together under their own strength to get the stone off the well so they can water their flocks, and they put the rock back on the well to protect their water source. And so Jacob walks up and he says, "Are you all from Haran?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're from Haran." And he says, "Do you know Laban?" They're like, "Yeah, we know Laban." And actually here comes his daughter Rachel now. And so we pick up the story in verse 9. Take a look at it with me. It says this: "While he was still speaking with them, Rachel came with her father's sheep, for she was a shepherdess. Now, as soon as Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, and his mother's brother, and the sheep of Laban, his mother's brother, Jacob came near. He rolled the stone from the well's mouth and watered the flock of Laban, his mother's brother. And then Jacob kissed Rachel and wept aloud. And Jacob told Rachel that he was her father's kinsman and that she was Rebekah's son. And she ran and she told her father. And as soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he ran to meet him and embraced him and kissed him and brought him to his house. Jacob told Laban all these things. And Laban said to him, 'Surely you are my bone and my flesh.' And he stayed with him a month. Then Laban said to Jacob, 'Because you are my kinsman, should you serve me for nothing? Tell me, what should your wages be?' And now Laban had 2 daughters. The name of the older was Leah. The name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful in form and appearance. Jacob loved Rachel, and he said, 'I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel.' And Laban said, 'It is better that I give her to you than that I should give her to any other man. Stay with me.' Verse 20, so Jacob served 7 years for Rachel. And they seemed to him but a few days because of the love that he had for her. And Jacob said to Laban, 'Give me my wife that I may go into her, for my time is complete.' And Laban gathered together all the people of the place and made a feast. But in the evening, he took his daughter Leah and brought her to Jacob, and he went into her. Laban gave his female servant Zilpah to his daughter Leah to be her servant. In the morning, behold, it was Leah. And Jacob said to Laban, 'What is this that you have done to me? Did I not serve you for Rachel? Why then have you deceived me?' And Laban said, 'It is not so done in our country to give the younger before the firstborn. Complete the week of this one, and we'll give you the other also in return for serving me another 7 years.' And Jacob did so and completed her week. And then Laban gave him his daughter Rachel to be his wife. Laban gave his female servant Bilhah to the daughter Rachel to be her servant. So Jacob went in to Rachel also and loved Rachel more than Leah and served Laban for another 7 years. All right, so here we go. We're going to see the story of self-awareness, gospel awareness through this story right here in Jacob's life. And I'm going to make 3 observations of ways that God can help make you more aware in your life. And the first is this, is that God brings you to different places. God brings you to different places. Listen, we know that Jacob is on the run because he's taken advantage of every single person in his life. So he's on the run with no inheritance. He has no money. He's kind of a poor guy right now. He has no family. Jacob is absolutely in survival mode in what's happening in his life. He's starting over. And we saw last week that while he was running and when he went to sleep that night, put his head on a pillow, he actually encountered the Lord. That God appeared to him with this ladder. Right? God showed up to Jacob and revealed to him who he really was. And so it was a significant time, right, for Jacob in that very moment. And we know that Jacob then leaves that place a little changed. But we also saw that Jacob has a ridiculously long way to go. Because if you remember, Jacob tried to make a transaction with God. He tried to barter with God. He tried to make a deal with God with this phrase, "If you, then I." if you give me a home, if you give me a family, if you give me clothes, if you give me food, if you come through and give me your presence, then I will make you my God. It's almost as if Jacob is saying, I need God to surrender to me. And so in Jacob's life, we learn this, and I hope this encourages you, that we never arrive on this side of heaven. Right? This is a process that we're experiencing. There's always work to be done in our hearts and in our lives before the return of Jesus. That transformation is slow. Can you agree? Right? Transformation is slow. There's times I wish it was faster. There's struggles I have in my life that I wish were gone. They're just not, right? There's work to be done. So spiritual growth there cannot happen apart from spiritual awareness. And so Jacob, his whole life, he's been on the hunt for approval. He's been desperate for blessing. His heart wants to belong. He wants to be successful. He wants purpose. But we see in verse 10, look at it with me. Now, as soon as Jacob saw Rachel, listen, him seeing Rachel changed everything. Absolutely changed everything. Do you think this was love at first sight kind of thing? You know, when my wife met me, I can't say it with a straight face. I can't say it with a straight face. Let's go back 60 years to a year of 1962. There was this young boy named Scotty Smalls. Scotty Smalls just finished the 5th grade, and Scotty was heading into a new town, into a new neighborhood. What he didn't realize that this was going to be the best summer of Scotty's life. And he met a bunch of friends in the neighborhood who loved to play the game of baseball. And they would go to the local baseball field that was called the what? Sandlot. The Sandlot. And they would play ball. Right? Now here's the problem with the Sandlot. If you hit a home run, if you hit the ball over the fence, what would happen? The Beast got your ball and your game was over. And so the Beast had all sorts of baseballs that the boys have lost by hitting home runs. And so they're out at the field one day and Ham is up to bat, and Ham gets up and he smashes a home run, and he's running around the bases all cheering about the big hit that he just had, and all the other boys are throwing their gloves at him. Why? Because they can no longer play ball. And so there's this one young boy named Michael. He had another name known as Squints, if you remember. And he went to the local store and he bought a baseball because they needed to keep playing ball. And so as he comes out of the store, he actually walks out, turns the corner, and he stops in his tracks. His feet are stuck. He's blown away by what he's seeing as he's seeing a young woman named Wendy. Do you remember the story? And he literally says, what? He takes off his 1960s glasses, black frames, and he says, geez Louise, and he rubs them on his shirt to make sure he can get a better view. Later in the story, we learn this. The boys like to handle the community pool where Wendy was a lifeguard. And there's a scene in the movie where Squints acts like he's drowning. So Wendy has to rescue him out of the water to give him a little mouth to mouth, right? She realizes it's a joke. She's disgusted by him. But at the end of the story, we learn this, that Squints and Wendy get married and they have 9 children, right? All of it started from Squints seeing Wendy. What happens with Jacob and what we just read? He saw Rachel, and what did he do? He goes up to the well that has the huge stone on it, and that really is, all the shepherds are waiting for all the shepherds to get there to collectively remove it together, and in his love, he just rips that stone right off, right? So Rachel's sheep can be watered. It's an incredible scene. God is going to use this new area, this new city, this new town, these new people to bring awareness in Jacob's life. And I wonder if Jacob's thinking, maybe right now I can start over. Maybe I can start my life, all the past failures, the mistakes I've made. There's new family, there's this new woman. Maybe today's the time I get to start over my life, or my past mistakes don't define me going forward. Love is a crazy thing, isn't it? And God is going to use Haran to bring about brokenness in Jacob's life. So here's a question for you. What is the good, the bad, and the ugly of the place around you? We could talk about our city. You could talk about your family. You could talk about your neighborhood. You could talk about the culture in your job. What's the good, the bad, the ugly? of the place around you. And I think we could ask where questions. Let me ask you a few. Here's a good. Where has God used this city, this location to make you more like him? Where has that actually happened? Here's the bad. Where has the city informed your idols, what you value right now? That might not align with God's word. Here's the ugly. Where has the city distracted you or hijacked gospel clarity in your life? Because God uses the good, the bad, the ugly of wherever we live to even help us understand who we are. The process of self-awareness. Here's the second, is that God works through difficult people. God works through difficult people, and we're going to spend our most time here. But Jacob is coming into a new city, surrounded by all sorts of new people, and he gets to meet his uncle Laban. Now, here's the thing. God is going to use Laban to give Jacob a little taste of his own medicine, right? And it's going to go bad for Jacob. We kind of already read the story. So let's break down what we know about Laban. Look at verse 13 and 14 with me again. It says, as soon as Laban heard the news about Jacob, his sister's son, he ran to him, to meet him, to embrace him, to kiss him, and he brought him into his house where he stayed, it says, a month. Do you see all the verbs there? He ran, he met, he embraced, he kissed, he brought. This same language is what's used in Luke chapter 15 when the prodigal son starts returning home and the father sees him from a long way off and he runs to him. And he buries his son in love and kindness. That's the description here. It's pretty clear what's happening. So Laban's incredibly thrilled to see his nephew. He's excited about this relationship. He actually used a phrase in there, and when we read it, that is exactly what Adam said about Eve when God brought Eve to him for marriage. Bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh is what Adam actually said. And that's the exact same thing that Laban says. Question, what do you think Jacob feels about Laban's response to meeting him? He ran, he met, he kissed, he brought him home. Like he overwhelmed him, right? What do you think Jacob's feeling was in that moment as he's been on the run for all the poor choices he's made in his life? I think Jacob is thrilled. Why? Because his father never ran after him. There's daddy wounds here, and they're deep. His dad never ran after him. His dad never declared love to him. He was always second best. He was always rejected by his own dad. So could it be that Jacob could start his life over right now with his uncle? Notice the conversation in verse 15. Take a look at it with me again. Then Laban said to Jacob, because you are my kinsman, should you therefore serve me for nothing? Tell me, what shall your wages be? Now Laban had two daughters. The name of the older was Leah. The name of the younger was Rachel. Leah's eyes were weak, but Rachel was beautiful in form and appearance. And Jacob loved Rachel. And he said, I will serve you 7 years for your younger daughter Rachel. And Laban said, it is better that I give her to you than I should give her to any other man. Stay with me. So Jacob served for 7 years for Rachel, and they seemed but a few because of his love that he actually had for her. So notice the conversation back up to verse 15. Laban says to Jacob, what should the wages be for you to actually be here with me? Now, what's unique to me is I think we've seen this before. You see, I think Laban is doing to Jacob what Jacob attempted to do with God, negotiate a contract, make a deal, make a transaction, because Laban knows something. He knows that Jacob is poor. He knows that Jacob has no money, he has no home, he has nowhere else to go in his life, which then means that Jacob is at the mercy of Laban in the story. But then we learn about the two daughters that Laban has. The older one's name is Leah. The younger one's name is Rachel. Leah is described as weak-eyed. Rachel's described as attractive and beautiful in form. So what does weak-eyed actually mean? Does it mean that Rachel can see further than Leah? Is that what the text is saying? No, they're saying there's something wrong with her face. I don't know what else to say, okay? She's actually unattractive. And the truth is this, Leah knew it. And here's what Leah believed. We're going to talk more about her next week and Rachel and the tension that's going to exist here. The story's ridiculous, by the way. It's highly dysfunctional, the whole thing. You think your family's dysfunctional. You're looking at the most dysfunctional chapters in the world that have ever been written, okay? It's insane. But here's the truth. Leah believed that she was unattractive. And because she was unattractive, she was unlovable. She's unlovable. That's her thought. That's her belief. No one would ever want her. Yet Rachel, the younger, is beautiful in form and she's attractive. And Jacob loved Rachel. And this love is going to drive everything that he does. He tells Laban, I'll offer you 7 years for this woman. He could have offered 2 or 3 probably and still received her. I'll give you 7. But what did the text say in verse 20? It just seemed like a few days to him because of his love that he has for Rachel. But notice, when he offers the 7 years, Laban doesn't verbally say yes. He doesn't give a handshake and say, deal. It's a yes. In 7 years, you can have my daughter Rachel. He simply just says, that's better that she marries someone like you than anyone else. He doesn't actually give an agreement, but the truth is this, Jacob heard a yes, and he's driven by his love for her. Here's what Jacob believes, and maybe you believe this too sometimes, about people or things. Jacob believes if I can have this woman, it's gonna fill every void in my life. If I can get this woman, all my past relationships that are broken, this one's gonna provide all the healing. This one's gonna give me everything I need in my life. I'll be fulfilled if I can get Rachel. But then we get to verse 21 through 25, and here's the truth, church. Sometimes when you and I are uninterested in looking into a spiritual mirror, God is going to use people around us to be the spiritual mirror. Have you experienced that in your life? That people see things in you or about you that you actually don't see yourself? Because that's what's happening right here in this story. And it's a crazy story, but we're gonna see that God's gonna use the tension between Jacob and Leah and a tension between Jacob and Laban to reveal who he actually is. So after 7 years of serving Laban, he comes to Laban and he says, give me Rachel. Now, the phrase there, theologians and even Jewish historians have tried to debate and figure out what is Jacob's motivation here. Let me be clear. His motivation is sexual in nature. He's literally saying, give me Rachel so I can have sex with her. That's what he demanded of her dad. It's probably not the words I would have chosen, but that's what he does. It's very black and white. Can you hear the desperation in his voice? If I get Rachel, everything will be better in my life. Everything is going to change. It'll change everything I've been waiting for. So Laban says, fine. So there's a wedding. Now here's the problem. A bride during these days would be fully veiled. So actually seeing her face would have been quite difficult. And so they go through the whole ceremony. They go through the whole entire feast. They go back to the tent at night. And the truth is there's no electricity. And so Jacob is thinking, this is the best day of my life. I'm getting the very thing I want, the thing I love most, and it's gonna be incredible. Yet in the morning, what happens? He's not married to Rachel. He's married to Leah, the unlovely Leah. And I want you to notice the phrase in verse 25. Look at it with me. It says, and in the morning, behold, it was Leah. Exclamation point, right? Like even our language helps us understand the astonishment of what's actually happening here in this place. It was total disappointment. All the joy he had was gone. The happiness just literally disappeared. And so this story is teaching you and I something very important. And that is this: whenever we believe that our eternal void in life can be filled with the next best thing in this world, that next morning, here's what we'll experience. Behold, stop, stare, gaze. It's Leah. You think that next job promotion is going to change everything in your life? And it's good to want that? And my prayer for you would be that God would be in his kindness, would give it to you. But if you're putting your whole life into that thing that's going to provide for you what you need, after you get that job, behold, it was Leah. You think if I could just be married, if I could just have that relationship, which is a good thing, a godly thing to want a spouse, my prayer is that you get to experience it in your life. But while you wait, if you think that's going to fill the eternal void I have in my life, when you get that relationship, guess what's going to happen? Behold, it was Leah. If we could just have children, man, we just love to have another voice in our home and a chance to raise someone up. And if you think that child's gonna fill the eternal void in your life, know this: behold, it was Leah. If we could just get that great vacation, and I hope you get it, and I hope it gives you rest, and I hope you get to enjoy it. When it's all said and done, if you're gonna put your life into that vacation, the morning it's gonna reveal this: behold, and it was Leah. This is a frustrating text. Whenever you and I believe that something in this world can be our Savior over Christ, in the morning, behold, and it was Leah. Because the only one who can actually satisfy is Jesus alone. So I'm positive that Jacob is absolutely furious. Do you think that Jacob at some point that morning looked at Leah and said what? I was calling you Rachel all during the ceremony, during the feast. Why didn't you say you were Leah? Now here's the thing. The Bible does not record this conversation. I have my own version. Okay? Here's how I think it went. Why did you not say that you were Leah? Hey, Jacob, remember that one time when, your dad was old and your dad was blind and you dressed up like a little boy to put clothes on to look like your brother? And when you know that you can take advantage of his blindness, and in the darkness, he calls out to you and he says this to you: are you really Esau? What did you say again, Jacob? You said, I am. Question. Just while we're questioning each other. Never happens in anyone else's marriage, I'm sure. Why did you do that? Why did you do that, Jacob? Why did you make that choice, take advantage of your own father? Jacob, look in the mirror. Here's what Jacob's learning. Jacob doesn't like it when people treat him how he treats others. Isn't that crazy? For some reason, that bothers him. He's bothered by receiving what he's given to other people. Listen, this is God making himself aware. Jacob now knows what it's like to be used. His sin has actually come full circle. The liar has been lied to. The cheater has been cheated. The deceiver has been deceived. So I could see him leaving the tent, now saying, this is all Laban's fault. And he marches up to his father-in-law. And he realizes that Laban used the veiling of the bride, Laban used the darkness of the night, and maybe Laban even used the wine to distract Jacob. And Jacob is furious. And he asks Laban a very interesting question. Why did you deceive me? Ironic, isn't it? Think about the words that are literally coming out of his mouth. Why did you deceive me? You see, Jacob is bothered that he's been cheated, that he's been lied to, that he's been deceived. You see, Jacob has received what he's given to others. Laban treated Jacob like Jacob treated Esau. In other words, God used Laban to great frustration on the life of Jacob. Great frustration. And Jacob eventually gets Rachel. He serves for another 7 years after, so 14 years he gives his life to Laban. He now has 2 wives. He then has 2 concubines. We'll talk about all the tension of that next week. But here's the question. What is the good, the bad, the ugly of the people around you? What is the good, the bad, the ugly of the people around you? Let me ask it in one follow-up question. We can ask who questions here. Who is God using around you to confront you, to conform you, or to comfort you? Who is God using around you to confront you, to conform you, or to comfort you? You can make a list of friends or neighbors or family or the workplace or people that have the same hobbies as you. Here's the point. God is actually there. That God will use the people around you that you love the most, and God will use the people around you that you despise the most to bring about the fruit of the Spirit in your life. Everyone is at God's disposal in your life for your own transformation. That's true in Jacob's life. And so the process of self-awareness is abundantly clear here. God uses places and he uses people. But lastly, God reveals our deepest passions as well. He uses our passions. We're going to go quick here, but Verse 30, look at it with me. It says, so Jacob went into Rachel also, and he loved Rachel more than Leah, and he served Laban for another 7 years. Listen, 3 times in this text, we learn that Jacob loves Rachel. And in verse 30, he loves Rachel more than he loves Leah. Haven't we seen this before, church? I mean, Isaac loved Esau more than Jacob. Rebekah loved Jacob more than Esau. Now Jacob is doing the exact same thing. Listen, whenever what we love becomes ultimate in our life, it also becomes our God. And here's what's true. Your deepest passions will either destroy you or grow you. Your deepest passions are going to ruin you, or it can restore you back to the Lord based on what those actually are. And if I can be honest, I think the truth of this story, we can dig deeper than Rachel. We need to dig deeper into Jacob's life and realize this. Jacob is still all about himself. It's actually less about Leah, and it's still more about what he wants in his own heart and in his own life. And here's the truth. Jacob's passion would destroy him if God doesn't actually intervene. And so here's what I know for me, and it's also true for you, that your passions will either drive you to Christ or pull you away from Christ. What are you passionate about? And while God doesn't seem very present in the story, know this, that God is still very sovereign. And in his sovereignty, he's overseeing every aspect of Jacob's story, that God's working through places and God is working through people, and God is going to work with his passions to do a work in him that only he can actually do. So here's what I've seen in my life, that God actually allows messy people to meet messy people to create a greater mess. And then God uses that greater mess to show us who we really are. Here, eat this, he says. So our question is, what is the good, the bad, and the ugly of the passion in you? We can ask what questions here? What do you love? What brings you joy and happiness? Here's an important question. What would devastate you if you lost it? What would devastate you? What fires you up? What comforts you in your life? All the good, the bad, the ugly of our passions. Our gospel takeaway this morning is this, is that gospel awareness reveals our desperate need for self-denial. I'm gonna add a word in there, all right? The word desperate. Right, our desperate need for self-denial. And so what does the gospel reveal? Listen, it reveals what you worship. It reveals what you love. It reveals what distracts you. It reveals what would devastate you. It reveals what you're devoted to. It reveals what you're passionate about. It reveals how you use your time. It reveals what relationships in your life matter most. It reveals what generosity should actually look like. It reveals where the gospel is not in your life and where the gospel is in your life. So here's the thing. If you want to know where gospel denial starts, it starts in the very place where God is not winning, where the gospel's not present. And it's not present there because you don't want God to rule and reign there. You want to call the shots there. Those are the places that we must start looking at, denying ourselves and giving it over to the Lord. Because once again, church, your deepest passions will destroy you or they'll grow you. They'll ruin you or it can restore you back to the Lord. And by the way, the greatest picture of self-denial that's ever existed is a man named Jesus. Jesus left his earthly throne going after the will of the Father. And he leaves the throne and he comes and he's born of a woman. He carries and wraps himself in flesh. He dies a sinner's death on a cross. He's nailed to it, church, for you and for me. And he's put in a grave. And 3 days later, he rises out of the dead. Just a whole picture of self-denial, self-denial, self-denial. It's everywhere in the story of the gospel. Which then means for you and I that self-denial is truly you and I following in the footsteps of Christ. Didn't he tell us to deny ourselves, to take up our cross and follow? It's a really uncomfortable message in West Michigan. So this morning we have an opportunity to turn our attention to our second commitment Sunday, which is really about self-denial for the glory of God, not for the glory of us. It's an opportunity for us as a church to say no to what we love so we can say yes to what we love even more. And so here's my challenge to our church. What if every single family filled out a commitment card? Every single family. And it doesn't matter if you're given $5 or you're given $5,000. What if every single family filled out a commitment card? Our elders, a couple of elders shared with me a story from last week on our Commitment Sunday that we had 2 of our students fill out a connection card. 2 of our students declared, we're gonna give $30 and $60 to the campaign. Isn't that incredible? Because here's what that means. That's participation. They say they want to be a part of this. And so my challenge to you is, do you want to be a part? Will you be a part? Will you do your part? Because what if we had 100% participation? How will you participate? So we have a marker and we have a card in every other seat there. We'd love for you to take a moment, fill it out. We'd love to hear from you in all 3 categories. We closed on our building this past week. So starting in June, we have to make our first payment on it. What we've requested in the beginning to educate all our people is that it's going to require $60 more per giving family. And 92% of our people said, let's do this. So now it's time for us to rise up and check the box and turn the card in. Second thing, what one-time gift would you be willing to give today or in the month of May for us to hit our goal? And then lastly, the last part of that card is, what would you be willing to commit over the next 6 months from June to December so we can be best informed on decisions that we actually need to make? And so I just want to encourage your involvement. I want to encourage you to pursue self-denial. I want to encourage you to step in and see what Jesus actually does by changing lives, because this is not just about what's right now. This is about the future. This is about who's not sitting next to you, who will be sitting next to you in 3 months, in 6 months, in a year, in 5 years, in 10 years. This is about every person who will experience life change through the gospel. This is about every baptism. This is about every story of life change. This is about every single church that can be planted. This is about every single way that we can serve our city and our community because we have our own place. Listen, our mission can go forward in greater ways by us having a home. And so my encouragement to you is participate, and do it right now. And so I'm going to have us stand, and our elders are going to come forward, and they're going to take the offering, and we're going to pass the bags down the aisle. And I'm going to pray for this moment here. So why don't we stand together? Take a moment, fill out a card if you need to. You can also do it online as well. We have big dreams for our church, right? For the God who's able to do far more than we can think, ask, imagine, or dream. And so let me pray. Lord Jesus, I want to thank you for your word, and thank you for how we can so clearly see ourselves in the life of a guy named Jacob. And Lord, and how you use everything around us, even when it feels like you're absent, it feels like you're distant. We know that you're very present, working through this place, through people, and through our passions. But I want to pray right now for this offering that we take. I want to pray that it will be used, Lord, to extend the mission of connecting people to Jesus for life change. Lord, this is all about people. Lord, this is about our vision of seeing our city redeemed, of working hard to strive after that, which will happen one life at a time, Lord. It's a one-life movement. And so I just want to pray, Lord, for generosity of Redemption Church. I want to pray that you'll go before us and that we'll get to see you move and work in ways that we never thought possible, because we're choosing, Lord, to strive and to live generous in this moment. In your name, amen.